Hey everybody, I'm here with Dan, and he and I are going to be talking about some questions that we have related to Figjam and creating Figjam templates. I've got a set of questions for you, Dan. Would love to get your perspective since you've been busy like migrating a lot of content over um, to FigJam over the past couple of weeks. So, based on your experience, what advice would you give for recreating content migrated from mural boards so that it works properly in FigJam?
Sure. I think the um, main advice I'd give is try not to recreate it as if it was a mural, create it as if it's a FigJam board. So use as many of the native FigJam features as possible. As I understand it in mural, you often use shapes and rectangles to represent things and group stuff. But in FigJam, we have things called sections, which is great for grouping content, and sticky notes for participant notes. Using those things gets you some nice quality of life improvements and allows you to manipulate them more in a more predictable manner.
Okay, awesome. Um, and one thing that we had talked about async before this call um, was making sure that FigJam boards are at native scale. Could you elaborate on what that means and how it applies to FigJam?
Sure. I think the best way to show this is through a visual. Um, Here's a board that I worked on. This board here is how it imported, and this is it at its native size. As you can see, it's significantly smaller. Why does it why does it matter? When you try and use the native tools like a sticky, this is how big it was appearing in the imported version of the file. Not particularly useful for um, participants or viewers of the board.
Gotcha. That definitely gets the message across, especially if you try to use it in a workshop and your feedback is like ant size. So yeah, thanks for demonstrating that. My next question was, what is the process for creating a published template? I've done it myself, but just for others who want to do that in the future, what would you recommend?
Sure. So the mechanism for creating a template is best documented in Figjam's help uh, guides online. I won't read it out here because it might change in the future, but
Mhm.
go have a look to that and perhaps we can include a link to it. But a process for it at GitLab is currently undefined. My initial suggestion would be to use the existing templates project that's in the GitLab product design team and go from there.
Okay. Um, and once we either create new boards or create templates, you kind of alluded to this in the previous question, but like, where should we put that content so it works with our file structure that we're still defining?
Sure. So yeah, yeah, like I said, it is undefined, but I personally have strong opinions and preferences about it. Something I noticed with Mural is a lot of the work is stored at a person level in people's private rooms. I think in FigJam we should use the existing stage, a GitLab stage group and feature structure that exists. And we might need some additional projects and teams for boards that don't fit into this. For example, things like cross stage or focus on specific personas that don't fit into that stage group and feature. The reasons for this is reducing silos, between people and teams, increase transparency, and increase the chance of ongoing use by teams. It's in the same place as the files they're using more frequently, um, keeping things all together. I have seen people suggest using Figma drafts. Again, personally, I'm pretty strongly against them. I think it's counter to our transparency value, our iteration value, and our collaboration values. But there's no defined design ops type flow for this stuff.
Awesome. My next question was something that you spoke to at the very beginning. Um, like I've only used Mural kind of in past roles and currently at GitLab, so I'm fairly new to Figjam. Aside from what you mentioned before with like, you know, using sections instead of like shapes, like what other tips would you have for new Figjam users?
I think I found Figjam to be a lot more forgiving. By that, I mean you don't have to do as many workarounds. It can be a little bit more scrappy and still behave in quite a nice way. Um, in previous roles, I've had the most success with Figjam when the boards have been less formal. So I'd encourage people to have fun in them, be quite expressive with stickers, doodles. There's also quite a vast plugin and widget library available that people are building and contributing to all the time. And I also saw that last week, I think, they announced a GPT integration with Jambot. So feel free to play with that and see if it's helpful and see if it's not, with all the usual AI caveats that apply.
So since you mentioned it's AI related, I'm not really familiar with Jambot. Could you just briefly touch on what it does?
Sure. So I think it's chat GPT like interface, but it interacts with elements on your Figjam board. So you could um, do things, for example, like add a paragraph of text and say, split this up into 10 idea stickies, and it generates 10 idea stickies. Or you might select a group of 50 sticky notes and say, what are the key themes, or group them based on the key themes. And that's sort of using a text interface. It's currently in beta, so I expect the functionality and features to change, but might be a good starting point for some types of work, and it might be a good oh wait, we need to spend a lot of time on this because this thing is hard point for some other work as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the overview. Um, and I think for the last part, we had talked before the recording about potentially recreating a template live just to see, you know, how that could work. Um, and so other people could use this to watch this recording. I've got a specific template in mind that doesn't have a whole lot of elements to it compared to some of the other templates that we have. I'll share that in the Google Doc.
Cool. All right then, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is check the scale like we spoke about earlier. I think it's going to be okay, but the way I do this is by picking the biggest piece of text on the page and making sure it's within this range. Some of the imported ones, this was 4,000, 2,500, very large numbers. Next thing I'm going to do is check stickies. Okay, these are going to be a little bit big, so we probably need to go up level because there's not a whole lot of elements here. I'll probably just create a new one to the side. This is split into multiple text boxes, which is quite annoying. A faster way to do it will be to copy from the source file, but again, because it's not too long for the sake of the recording, I'll just do it like that. I have large as our intro, and we've got some more subheadings here. For now, I'm just going to focus on getting the elements in, and then I'll do some arranging and grouping later. Do you happen to remember what was? I'm
Um,
assuming these circles weren't always circles.
no, I think these were different icons that were specific to Mural, so they didn't really import over, but I can look into Mural to see what they were. Um, so we can
Because,
see if pull something similar.
yeah, trying to understand what they're trying to do. Copy.
It looks like
So,
the what went well section was like a smiley face, and then the what areas could our team improve was a sad face.
oh, that's a shame. Don't be like that. Something that's quite cool about stickies is they come with the author built in,
Mm-hmm.
which can be toggled on and off. So if you preload with stickies, they'll all have whoever created the template as an author name in the first instance, which might be something you want to avoid. But if you try editing this one, it should change. I think you're in the file, so you can go ahead and do that. It
Yeah, let me
should
try that.
update to your name, but it's something to bear in mind that you might not want to do. Yeah, so it's changed to Will right there. So I think there's room for a decision on that one. Do you have any strong preference about leaving? I quite like, in the past, I found it useful to not have existing stickies because it allows people to do their own. I found people group stuff together naturally. If they see they've got a similar idea to someone else, they'll put it in that free space. Whereas pre-presenting a rigid flow dictates an order almost. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I found participants can do their own grouping when there's nothing there, making meaning from the empty space. So that's a choice. Do you have a preference how it's done?
Um, I think I think you made a good case for not including stickies. I certainly have noticed that when I've done like past workshops, they're like, oh, am I like trying to dictate too much about like, oh, there should be only up to this many comments, based on the number of stickies that I've left. So I do like the idea of just leaving it blank and just saying, just add a sticky to each of the sections.
And have you found more success with using color for meaning or color for author? Because I've seen it go both ways in workshops before.
Um, I've primarily used it as color for meaning, but I have seen other people on the team that have used color for author. So I do like that Figjam in this case, like lets you specify like who's edited that sticky note.
Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna pop these. Actually, I don't think this needs a section. Uh, so I'm just gonna put, how do I unsection? Unsection, please. Oh, come on. Where'd you come? I'm gonna put all of these in separate sections. Uh,
Okay.
Rather than draw a box. You might find it useful to show and hide that way. So you might go, when everyone's things are in, hide previous section, and only talk about things one at a time. Might be quite useful. These a color to suggest. I'm making design decisions, I guess, here about having things consistent or pinning things to corners. I lean slightly towards, but this is a design choice rather than a um, functional choice, if that makes sense. But if you have strong opinions, then I can change all of that around as well.
I'm pretty flexible when it comes to these templates.
So yeah, just dropping in the text. If you need more distinction, you do have a choice of typefaces. I find the scribble one useful to mark separate notes from instructions, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
additional, not essential information, um, or almost as if the author's talking to the participants rather than the template talking to the participants, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think let's add some stickers for uh, some personality. Like I was saying, I've seen these, especially in syncs. It can be hard for people to stay focused. There's lots of distractions. There's lots of things calling for attention. I found if boards have lots of this going on and people are causing their own mischief in corners of boards, at least they're still focused on the session rather than causing mischief and distractions elsewhere. Uh, so I quite like having these in there. What went well? That's not right. What ideas do you have? Oops. And should we take action? I think that is pretty much how I would recreate this board. Do you have any questions? Something I did do is check to see a rough idea of how many post-it notes would fit. Does that seem like a reasonable amount, or would you expect more?
I'd probably expect a little bit more. Um, so that's a good idea to like test it out to see where the how many of those native scale um, post-its can fit in a given section.
Sure. Because of that, then let's make all of these a little bit bigger so we can fit a bunch more in. Something that's nice about the section actually, as opposed to a rectangle, is it when I try and select the stickies, can you see here it selects the rectangle? But when it's
Mm-hmm.
a section, it knows, it takes a good guess. Hey, this person's probably not trying to select the background. Whereas if I was in a rectangle, it comes along for the ride.
Gotcha. Yeah, I had
So
that problem a
that's,
lot in Mural.
so yeah, sections.
And where did you go to find sections? Just so I
Or
remembered.
I use a keyboard shortcut, but I'm sure there's a thing here.
Oh, okay.
Sections, there we go. Other useful stuff is you can add tables, which work pretty well. Code blocks are quite useful as well. I think they're hidden here. There we go, with a small selection of
Oh, cool.
languages. They format pretty nicely. If you do have post-its and shapes and uh, text, uh, the arrows to join stuff up works pretty well a lot of the time. If you know you're making a flow of things, um, you can add another one through this little menu. This has changed since I last used it, but that's quite nice. So that works quite quickly. Um, you can change the styling of these to be different colors, different endpoints, thick or thin, dashed. Need some text in the middle, no problem. Need to move stuff around. It's got a bunch of stuff there. But otherwise, I think that's pretty much it. Were there any other questions you had?
Yeah, one question I had is, you spoke to how you commonly use the shortcut for sections. What other like common shortcuts or keyboard shortcuts do you use?
It's a good question. That's probably it. Um, and that's because it's a lot of the shortcuts are the same in Figma as in Figjam. Oh no, I lied. There's two more. Forward slash brings up a chat thing that other people in the file can see.
Hmm.
Text bubble. Uh, e brings up. Oops. E brings up this menu, which allows you to react in real time. Pretty encouraging for presenters when they see stuff like that going on, or add some stamps of approval, or otherwise, if you shake your mouse enough, you can give someone a high five if they in the file as well. So yeah, those are E and the section one.
Nice. Well, I think that's all the questions that I had. I appreciate you demonstrating all this, especially within this recording.
You're welcome.
Anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. Um, sticking to maybe just sticking to defaults works well. Like here, I just use the sizes that exist. I didn't try and be too fancy with things. Um, less less is more sometimes, to let the content and more space for participants to surprise us as facilitators, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate
Hey, you're welcome.
the time to chat.